Shabbat Shalom. Please be seated. Yahweh's peace be with you all. Okay, so the title slide is up already. So let's get right to it. Yahweh's in full control, so hopefully we'll get through these 20 slides. All right, so we see in the first slide, go ahead and put up the next slide. You all remember Pastor's I'm in full control dream it was from 5:12, but he told us about it on 5:23:15. And this sermon here was given just a few months later. This was from 10:31:15. And this is from chapter 35, verse 40. He says, now it started actually in 1933. He was talking about the work of Yahweh with the conception of a prophesied witness. That's the last witness who was born in August 1934, August. So I had to be conceived 9 months before that, which took it back to 1933. And in this sermon, he's talking about 4 specific numbers and how they all tie together. They're actually from each other. It starts with 1934, goes to 1933, and then it says C 1961 and 183. Those 4 numbers, keep them in your mind. When you put in what he just said in Yahmatria, you get 1942, which is from 1933, which means to be in the sense of existence, to breathe. And then it says C 1961 and 183. 1961 means to exist, beacon, be or become. Remember that word beacon as a light going forth or a signal. Arise, appear, continue, reach, followed, allotted, numbered, running, time, to become, accomplished, committed, a state of being. The ruin is come, fallout. And then 183 means to incline, desire, desires, craves, longing, greatly desires, and lusts after. And pastors explain that this meant that the witness, he lusts after and craves the laws of Yahweh. This is explaining from 1934 his very being, his very character, okay? Now go to the next slide. Pastor elaborates in verse 41. He says, word number 1934, if you want to look this up, word 1934, it says from 1933 and from 1961 and 183, which we'll read next. Word 1933 says, supposed to mean to breathe, to be, that is life, to be alive in the sense of existence. Now, this is what was promised in the beginning, but then death came by sin through Eve, through deception. That's the same thing it's done now, but the whole world is deceived. Yahweh said, and he looked, and there was no one. And then he says, in the last days, I will establish my house, and a king and a branch, and they will work together, he said, and they will bring forth judgment and justice throughout the earth. And then now key in on this in verse 49, he's elaborating on this word 1961, the word heya. He says, let me go back a little further. The prophets used heya to project Yahweh's intervention of the future. Now that's what this word is that it's speaking of. 1934 that comes from 1933, which was comparable to 1961 and 183. The prophets use heya to project Yahweh's intervention in the future. By using this verb, they emphasize not so much the occurrence of predictive events and circumstances as the underlying divine force that will affect them. If you put that together with that dream he gave me not too long ago saying, I'm in full control, remember that? So Yahweh is in full control, and they gave the scripture, Isaiah 2:2, which I'm reading from. You can check me out, Isaiah 2:2. And you remember in Isaiah 2:2, it says, in the last days it will come to pass. That word in the last days is 1961, okay? Keep that in your mind. Go to the next slide. So I put in this right here, what he just said about this verb heya. And notice the number 6671 means to press out oil, to make oil. Anointed oil, fresh oil, oil as producing light. Think of the golden oil that comes forth from pastor's mouth. The second number, 4002, means springs, well, a fountain, from 5042, meaning to flow, to pour out, to utter, to send forth abundantly. Talking about this pouring out of this golden oil that comes forth from the witness Israel. Want proof? The third number, 43:16, is Micaiah, who is like Yahweh. Remember Micaiah, Yisrael Hawkins, who is like Yahweh, okay? Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Let's take those four numbers that I just gave, that Pastor just told us, 1934, 1933, 1961, and 183, and put them in Yahmatria, and you get the number 4817, and it means a chariot, a seat in a vehicle. A chariot, a seat in a vehicle. And 4817 in Greek means to reckon, to compute, to consider. And that's what we do with these numbers. We're adding them up, we're computing them, we're considering them, and we're going over them. And Yahweh's showing us and backing up these prophecies with these numbers. Okay, so I put in a chariot, seat in a vehicle, which is what 4817 meant, and I got a double 1248. Well, what could that mean? 1248 means colts. It means anointed, anointed one, branch, servant, lamb. Remember the lamb working with the witness? Firstborn, builder of the family name, restored. It's from 1129. And then 1248 in the Greek means service, ministry, administration, minister, pastor, suffer persecution, given to persecution. Would that not be talking about us in this chariot, that's riding in this chariot with the great overseer? Everybody has their seat in that vehicle, right? Okay, let's go to the next slide. Because Yahweh says when he gives you two numbers that match, you need to add them up. When you add up 1248 and 1248, you get 2496, which means from 2492, dream, dreamer, of dreams with a prophetic meaning. Y'all remember that dream 512, right? That had a prophetic meaning, okay? And we all remember the peace van down there. That's the white van that he was riding in when he had this dream. Let's go to the next slide. Now this sermon I'm quoting from, this first sermon I'm quoting from is chapter 35. Yahweh is in full control of his work is the title. Showing to his house detailed prophecies and numbers and scriptures from 10:31:15. When you put in Yahweh is in full control of his work, you get the number 393. Can I have my next slide? That's because 393 days later exactly, Pastor gave another sermon on 11/26/2016 where he talked about those four numbers again. 1934, 1933, 1961, and 183. So when you put in 393 days, you get Pastor's tag there. Yisrael Hawkins' personal tag, 322. You see that? His chariot. One of his chariots. It's got many chariots. Okay, let's go to the next slide. From that sermon on 11/26/16 and in verse 40, or chapter 40, verse 111. By the way, why was the first sermon from verse 40 and this one's from chapter 40? Because it's been 40 years since 1980. Remember 2020? We're in 2020 now? And Yahweh's going to make it perfectly clear. Perfectly clear. You're going to have 2020 vision this year. There's not going to be any mistake who's in control of this house. And always has been from the very beginning. Now, Pastor says in verse 111, let's see. Well, known long before, this revelation seems to emphasize that the same Yahweh who made the covenant was the Father who kept the covenant. They give Exodus 3:14. We heard that this morning, right? It's more than a simple statement of identity. In other words, it's not just Yahweh saying, I'm Yahweh. Exodus 3:14 is where he says, I am Yahweh. They give this scripture here, Exodus 3:14, is more than a simple statement of identity. I am that I am. It is a declaration of divine control. A declaration of divine control of all things. Now look here at Exodus 3:14 in the interlinear. What number do you see there? He says, I am, 1961. Who is 834? That's the month and the year Pastor was born. And then I am again 1961. You see that? Why is that so important? We're going to see here in a few minutes. 1961. I've always been in 3 control, 314. 314 means in Hebrew, future, western, come later, last one, west. Any questions? Okay. Well, let's go to the next slide, because I put that in Yahmatria, what Pastor just said about 314, Exodus 3:14. Now remember Pastor's dream. First number, 2470, means afflicted, sick, be grieved, put to grief, make prayer, beseech. Remember? Someone was sick in the house. Pastor was grieved. He was worried about how to help this person when he went to sleep that night. The next number, 4118 in the Hebrew, means speedily, in a hurry. Remember, he was going pretty fast, about 70 miles an hour. From 4116 means anxious, hurries, make speed, be carried headlong, fearful, suddenly. And then the next number, 2771, means road, path, crossroad. You remember he said there was an intersection ahead. It was a crossroad up ahead and there was traffic. And he was worried because he was going 70 miles an hour toward that intersection, that crossroad. Okay? Now, when you add up these numbers, you get 9539, but you can only use those first 3. So 935, notice, 935 in the Hebrew means traversing. That means traveling. Apply, press. Remember he said, I pressed the brake and I had no brake. I pressed the brake and I had no brake. Approach, he's approaching the intersection. Entering the intersection. Went through the intersection. These are the definitions, folks. I'm not making them up. Arrived, harbor. Arrived, he said, remember he said he thought he was on the coast and he made it through the intersection and there was the ocean. Remember that? The ocean began, the harbor. Brought it to pass, planned, led, carried. That's right. Yahweh led him through and he carried him through and he made it to the end of the road, Route 66. Okay, I'm telling you, you're going to be seeing more about this road, and you're going to see this is the road that Isaiah spoke of from Isaiah 1 through Isaiah 66, the route that man has chosen to take. Okay, this Route 66. And if you'll notice, at the end, Route 66 ends at the Santa Monica Pier. Notice the Santa Monica Harbor. See that sign? Next slide. Maybe this will seal it for you. Next slide. Pastor said in verse 112 of the same sermon, what did my dream tell me? Y'all remember that? When I read this, I almost flipped. He's talking about when he read about Exodus 3:14, that Yahweh's in full control. He says, you remember I was driving a car with people in it and nowhere to go except the ocean in front of me, and the brakes went out. Then the car stopped on its own and Yahweh gave me the words, I'm in total control. And here we see it in writing, he says. Well, notice here, Santa Monica, 66. You see the ocean there? The end of the trail. Starts in Chicago, and it goes 2,448 miles to Santa Monica Pier. Can I have my next slide? So I put that in Yahmatria, what Pastor just said. And the first number is 3116. It means hide, to conceal, to cherish, to love, to cherish with affection. Think of how Pastor was protected by Yahweh. The number 2350 means to disturb greatly, to terrify, to be troubled in mind. Disturbance, emotions spun out of control, especially when accompanied by shrieks. Yeah, there were some people in the back of the van probably going, ah! Right? Pastor wasn't, but we probably were. Right? To be troubled, alarmed, very upset, startled, to be troubled in mind, frightened, and pass. He went through. He made it through. And then the next number, 2350, means protection from 2348, shore, coast. Remember he said, I was on the coast of the sea? Well, what sea was it? What sea's there in Santa Monica? It's called the Pacific Ocean. And we should know what Pacifica means. La Solution Pacifica. What does Pacific mean? It means peace. Pacific means peaceful. The peaceful ocean, 5:12, you see that? That's where he was. Let's go to the next slide. Just to emphasize this, Route 66, chapter 35 that I just quoted from a few quotes back, Yahweh's in full control of his work. Now notice this, showing to his house detailed prophecies. You see how I got that underlined? Put that in Yahmatria. Showing to his house detailed prophecies, 2,448. That's the 2 billion people turning to Yahweh, 2448, at the end of the Route 66. Notice the last stop, the end of the 2,448 miles of America's Main Street, or the Mother Road. And we're going to learn more about that, because Route 66 is the road they jumped on in Oklahoma to go to California to get rich. You remember that? Back in the dirty 30s, in the Dust Bowl days. And it was John Steinbeck, the one that wrote the book, The Grapes of Wrath, which we're treading, the grapes of wrath. He called it the Mother Road. Now, you want to see something really mind-blowing? You want to know how great Yahweh is? You all know how great Yahweh is, right? I can't hear you. All right. Now, we're not in full control. I'm not, okay? I'll be the first to admit it. But I know Yahweh is. Now, there's a couple mistakes that were made in this book of Israel. But you know what? Yahweh can take our mistakes, and he's still in full control. I'll let you look up the mistaken words here later in the book of Israel. I'm going to show you. I took those 2 verses that Pastor was marveling. Remember, he says, Yahweh's showing is in full control in Exodus 3:14. I took those 2 verses. I did not change one thing. Go ahead. Drum roll, please. You see that number? That's the date of Pastor's dream. 5/12/15. You see that? Come on, give it up for Yahweh. That's the date he had the dream. And he was marveling about it. Now my next slide. What is this white van he's talking about? His white van? What does this represent? The first number in his white van, 138, means worshiper of Yahweh. And it means 138 in the Greek is to choose, to take, to raise, to pick, to expiate sin. From NASA, 5375, remember on that license tag is 7613, and it's also from NASA. And it means accepted, acceptable. Remember, if you want to be acceptable to Yahweh, you got to have the character of the man that rides this van. Okay? And it means promoted, honor, honorable, to spare, transporters of all things. Pastor's a transporter. I see him transporting young boys every day. I've never got to ride in his van yet. That's a pretty great honor. And he's a great driver too, obviously, right? Okay, the second number, 828, that's Pastor's birthday. And the third number, 1870, means a way, road, journey, manner, actions, conduct, course, highway, manner, mission. Think of the missionary. Pathway, practice, a course of life or mode of action, passenger, conversation, meaning behavior, from 1869 to tread. Remember, treading the grapes of wrath. To guide, to lead, to tread, treader, treading, trod, walk, tread away. Next slide. Let's skip the next slide. I don't have time for that. Let's go to the next. We do. You see that slide right there? That's the van crossing the River Yarden. See that? He's making the crossing. Okay? Don't be afraid. It looks big. I know it looks kind of like a giant mud puddle, but it's really a river. That's the peace van. And Pastor says, getting you ready. I brought this many times, and I want to touch on it this morning. The prophecies, the Yahmatria, and everything we've done. Everything I've done since Yahweh called me, it's been recorded, and it's been tagged for a certain time. They're tagged with card tags, and Yahweh even put more than one. He put 3. I think we'll look up the others. If I had that old Model A tag, which I'll bring up next time I speak, Yahweh willing, that I drove for a few years, I would put that in here because I'm sure Yahweh has it in the Yahmatria too. He's got you tagged to this work in these last days to receive this great authority. That's what this is all about. That's 5674, and it means to pass over, bring across, bring over, bring through, continue, to cross over, ford. Yes, it's talking about a Ford Model A and a Model T, but it's also talking about the small body of water we got to cross. Pass through, passing over, escape, deliver, and overcome. Okay, so 1961, next slide. I'm wrapping it up right here. Next slide. 1961, what was so important about that year? 1961 is called the upside down year. You know that, right? An upside down year is a year which reads the same when the year numbers turned upside down, when the numerals which form the year's number appear the same when it's rotated 180 degrees or turned upside down. Now, you know in the next, you want to know how odd this number is? The next upside down year is in 6009. Okay? And it's never been in your lifetime except 1 year, 1961. Drum roll, please. You see that? You see that? Why is it called the upside down year? Next slide. It's because that's when pastors started preaching in 1961 in Romney, Texas. And notice, Yahweh says, woe to those who seek deep to hide their counsel from Yahweh, whose works are in the dark, and who say, who sees us? Who knows us? Truly our turning things upside down will be esteemed as the potter's clay. For will the work say of him who made it, he did not make me? Will the thing that is formed say of him who formed it, he has no understanding? Notice you get number 2015. That's the year pastor had his dream that Yahweh's in full control. And it means to turn, to overturn, to pervert, turning around, to turn over, to the contrary. Next slide. Pastors, here's the map of where pastor gave, where pastor spoke in Romney at that community center that he was telling you about last week. Notice what road it's on. 183. Remember? 1934, 1933, 1961, and 183. There it is on road number 183 between Nimrod there. You see Nimrod to the left? Now, finally, my last slide, Isaiah 2:2 that pastor was boasting about there. Now, my next slide. You see that? Isaiah 2:2 is 1961, and it shall come to pass. But guess what? There's something hidden in there. When you take the Hebrew characters and you put them in the Hebrew Yahmatria calculator, it comes up to 26. That's how old pastor was in 1961 when he was preaching in Romney. And remember, we heard this morning, Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh is in full control. He's 26. Pastor was 26. Abel was 26. And guess what? I'm going to prove to you next time, they were both, Yahshua and pastor were both baptized in Nimrod. Both of them. At this time, if you'd all please stand.